It was interesting. I mean, when everything first happened, we're a community-minded organization. So the first thing that we were really thinking about was, what can we do in the community to be helpful? Obviously, we have relationships with, dozens of landowner families. So we cared about their livelihood and how they were getting by with their farm businesses and everything. But then also the communities that rely on those farm businesses to thrive. As things started to settle a bit, when the food security piece kind of settled a bit and people were starting to get a little bit more understanding about the virus and the impact, we obviously recognized that people were still wanting to do stuff. And it was nice out, so people were wanting to get outside. So, as you said, people don't really think about land conservation during these times, but they still benefit from it. And that's them going to the local parks, the local trails, where to the point where you saw that access skyrocket. I mean, the big, thing for us with the Phyllis Packing House is that we have a new roof, on the way. That's been a big deal. Last year was pretty much us finalizing the smokestack stabilization. So those two 90-foot smokestacks, they'll be good for the next 100 years, maybe more. But the reality of that is we couldn't do anything else with that building without stabilizing those stacks, because if they fall over onto the building, then that whole project's done. And then we received more grant funding to continue moving forward the rest of the building renovation. So, several months ago, we started the process of replacing the roof and, started working a bit on the inside, clearing out old debris, replacing windows and old beams. So if you go in there today, I mean, granted, it's still, an old dilapidated building, but, it's getting, to where it needs to be. So right now we're actually looking at opening as early as summer 2021, just with the progress that's being made. Because once that roof is on there, everything's sealed up. You don't have to worry about water getting in, standing. And I mean, it's going to be a living history, honestly, because the building itself, we're going to, fix it up, refurbish it, but it's going to still look a lot like it is right now. We did a tour there last year, for a lot of community members during the smokestacks celebration, where we just, celebrated it being finished. And we had all types of people come by, obviously elected officials. We had people who had family members that worked there or had worked there themselves, and that was their first time being back in the building since like the 60s. And it was really fascinating to see all these different people just feeling what the building had to tell them. And I think that when the project is finished and when you see that new life, obviously the tenants that are going to be there, obviously, the retail spaces that are going to be there, they'll be great. But I think the most powerful thing is just the representation that it has for Cambridge. So we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that there's, some living artifacts there, that people can understand the history and the heritage, ways to collect oral histories from people as well as they come into the building, and, stations where they can listen to those on hand. And then obviously having Cannery Park, adjacent to that, that's going to be a beautiful asset too. So 2021, we're really looking forward to that. This year has been one that's been great for reflection and understanding how we've gotten here after these 30 years, especially celebrating our 30 years with Party to Preserve. And I think going through that process of reflecting really just showed us a lot about where we need to go and how we get there. Delmarva Oasis, that's been an initiative that we've talked about for the past few years. And that's our initiative to protect 50% of the Delmarva Peninsula by 2030. And that's something that we plan on, really digging our heels into in the upcoming year. Starting in January, leading through March, we're actually going to be leading a series of workshops just focused on a changing Delmarva Peninsula, funded by the Rouse Foundation. The overarching theme is obviously, changing Delmarva Peninsula, the changing climate, the changing economy, how industries are adapting and such. But it's really going to be underscored by just the growing climate crisis. And not to be doom and gloomy, but to really highlight the opportunities that are available within the changes that we're seeing. So we want to focus these workshops on, natural climate solutions that we see happening, regionally, across the nation, across the globe, that can be adapted here and implemented to support, changing Delmarva Peninsula. But also just the economic factors of that, and then the individual actions that can be taken to, just contribute, to these opportunities that are going to be ahead. I definitely think the important thing for folks to know is that for 30 years, we've been protecting land on the Eastern Shore. And if you look at a map of land that's protected here, the success is, pretty clear. And there's a lot of preserved land in perpetuity. And now we're at a point where we recognize that we have to figure out how to go above and beyond that. So that's why we're really driven to working with other states to understand how this whole peninsula, can link together as conservation goals. Especially understanding that we're seeing this urban migration. We're seeing climate migration, becoming more of a, this is going to be a really attractive area, more than we've probably ever seen. So, this is a really good opportunity for us just to say, this is what Delmarva Oasis is about. This is what climate means to Delmarva Oasis and how it's driving a lot of the decisions that we're going to be making for land protection. Let's use the uniqueness of this landscape to really capitalize on some opportunities. Even though it's a threat, threats always create chances for, some type of opportunity, some type of positive change.